All right, welcome everybody. In accordance with the provisions of MGL Chapter 30A, Section 20, notice is hereby given that the Planning Board will meet on Monday, December 22nd, 2025 at 7 p.m. Members of the public are welcome to attend this remote-only meeting by the remote Zoom connection provided below. We're going to do all of our attendance and votes via roll call vote. So I'm going to start off introducing myself. I'm the chair of the Planning Board, Chris Montfort. Joining us, we have Gary Sullivan, the vice chair.
Hello, here.
We have Dan Seeger, the clerk.
Present.
Melissa Mayo.
Hello.
Generally, we have Gary Searle with us as well, but I don't think he is joined. But we are also joined by Richard McCarthy, our town planner.
Thank you.
All right. So, Rich, we are looking to discuss the Medway Branch shared use path design options. Kick it off.
Great. Thank you very much. So as you recall, I had done a present only myself at River's Edge to talk about the sorry, got the M's wrong right off the bat. Retract that. Medway Branch shared use path, which essentially takes the abandoned Medway Branch rail line, starting at town center, heading out towards Millis on the old Medway Branch line, and looked at it to convert it to a shared use path for pedestrian and bicyclists and other users. We had an informational meeting at the Norfolk Community Center on December 9th, and then we followed up with a meeting of the planning board on December 9th in the evening. There was a lot of good discussion on multiple points at all three of those meetings. And from that discussion tonight, I want to talk about some options to give consideration to. And one of those is to proceed what would be considered phase 2, along with phase 1 has been submitted, which is Barnstable Road to Tucker Road. From the meetings, there was a lot of discussion about having one section of Medway Branch, which would, function different, look differently than what was originally proposed. So what I want to talk about this evening is adding the second piece, which would be going from Tucker Road to Boardman Street. So it'd be continuous for that whole segment up to the transfer station. And then what we talked about down the road would be, I'm calling it phase 3, which would be from the transfer station out to Dean Street. And just to recap on some of the comments that I've heard since then, there was significant reservations in terms of the future phase, which is from, I'll call it phase 3 now, which was going to make a connection to River's Edge. That connection, and I'm going to share I'll share the presentation. So hold on a second, just for a visual that I have.
Awesome. Well, while Rich does that, we are at times getting coughing or noise from other folks who are not muted. So if you can go ahead and make sure you're muted.
Thank you. So essentially, I'll speak to some of the points from this graphic here. So what I did is I've revised this graphic to show that the green is that future phase to go out to Dean Street. This little top of the screen is a future connection to River's Edge. And I know there was a significant amount of reservations from the residents at River's Edge. So if that were to happen, it would be with their support. It's very well likely that, the town could proceed with the green phase, which is phase 3, to get out to Dean Street, which ultimately makes its way to Millis, and then would be a future connection to Leland Wild, which is the former Norfolk airport. So phase 3 can happen on its own, and there doesn't need to be a connection to River's Edge. It's more of a connection for that neighborhood. But again, if there's not support for that. It doesn't need to happen. It's not a must thing. It's just something that seems to be a good idea. But if it's not supported, perhaps then it may not occur. The reason why we're switching, and I'm talking tonight to you, is the grant program for the Complete Streets has changed. Just as we submitted our grant for phase one, two things have changed. One is the dollar amount award has increased to $1 million. Previously, it was $500,000. In addition to that, the grant program switched where you can apply for construction money or design money, and you can do them in year after year. There's not, previous to that, there was a bigger gap when you can apply for monies. So having considered some of the points since phase one is in, the grant application deadline is January 8th for which we would consider phase two. It's construction. Between both phase one and two, it's a total of about $1.1 million. Some of the points that people had raised in the meeting about safety concerns for pedestrians along the sidewalk side, the shared use path side, is something that we put into this revised proposal, which would be to be able to take and install a granite curb, raised granite curbing along that entire length of where the shared use path would be. By combining the two phases, there's enough money within the construction dollars to be able to do that. The benefit of doing that is obviously it's a potential safety enhancement, but also then it allows to reduce the width of the grass strip that was shown. And I'm going to go to the end to show you just the sketch of it here. You can reduce that grass strip down to 2 feet, which is presently out there today, which with the addition of the vertical granite curb on the edge provides a safety measure to people who are walking and biking along that shared use path. And we did talk about before that the folks that would be considered in terms of biking would be more younger people who are not really cyclists per se. They're not a true cyclist that is comfortable riding at all along shared streets. This is more of a younger person riding a bicycle or somebody with a stroller, that kind of having that open space to be able to move along the shared use path. We could also look at some of the traffic calming measures that people talked about by combining the projects, which is another benefit to doing that. And third is that we could apply to mass trails for the design for this. So obviously with this larger scope, I'm going to go back to the first slide. Not the first slide, sorry. This slide here. So again, we're talking phase one and phase two. It's much longer. By combining them, we can address some of the traffic calming concerns that were raised, some of the safety measures, and then we'll put in place at one time this project. It wouldn't be phased. It would be able to put it together in one construction process. By doing that, we could then pursue grant funding where the request that I asked for the planning board for phase one, which is approximately $62,000. If we added, rounded up to $70,000, I'll show you this slide, then I'll pause for a moment. This slide here. So there's $111,000 in the mitigation fund. 62 is what the board voted on previously, which didn't include construction observations. With the grant, the maximum award is $100,000. If we took 70 from that mitigation, combine it with this grant award $170,000 would give us complete engineering design for phase 1 and 2, plus construction observations through the construction process. So it provides an order of magnitude larger project one time. And just for those that these are all competitive grants, we did hear about, well, we just want a sidewalk. In the environment which we're in today, the monies that are out there for these type of projects, sidewalk alone projects are not competitive compared to shared use paths. So in part, that's why we're proposing this as a shared use path for that corridor. I'll pause right at the moment for questions from the board first.
Yeah, Rich, I got a couple of questions just to sort of clarify. So what we're now talking about is effectively an expansion of the existing sidewalk from Boardman to Tucker to accommodate this path, and then an additional, new path from Tucker to Barnstable. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, did you
And-
say Tucker to Barnstable? I thought earlier you said Tucker to Boardman, but I just want to clarify which one.
So
he was going up the street, right? He was going Boardman to Tucker, then Tucker to Barnstable, right?
So Boardman to Tucker, there's a sidewalk now that would be expanded into a wider path. And then Tucker to Barnstable, there's no sidewalk, and that section would be constructed a path.
Correct.
Yeah. And just because I know this came up a few times for clarity, we do not have funding in this account sufficient to build a sidewalk there now, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And if the questions I want to say do come up, I have Matt Shoot from Beta Group on the Zoom call tonight. There was some specific technical questions that come up. So,
Rich, can I just ask you to clarify one thing?
Sure.
A couple of things that you mentioned, the raised granite curb for security, which I know we discussed last time at the last meeting. And then traffic calming measures also was something we discussed at the last meeting. And you had mentioned that if we combine these two phases, we would be able to do those two things. And is that because of the increased funding that we would have access to? If we can.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
You can take it.
And one of the, not that it's important to know in terms of mass trails, I think in general, when we, just for the board's insight or, just specifics with that program and just for the public at large, because the right of way is under the control of the town, it makes that mass trails grant an attractive grant source to us to go for the design money.
Do we know what their top value would be if awarded?
It's 100,000. We'd be going for the max. Clarify when the lake to Main Street would be done.
So before we start entertaining questions from the audience, any other questions from the board? Gary, anything on your side? No? Okay. All right, so then there is a question. Ed, if you want to come off mute.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that I know Rich mentioned about that it would be linked to Main Street, but I wasn't quite sure I remember when that time frame would be.
Yeah, the Main Street is not determined as of yet.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed. And just open meeting protocol, introduce yourself, where you live, for
Okay.
future.
Okay.
Any other questions in the audience?
I'll make a statement if you don't mind. Is that okay? Is that all right?
I approve of it if Chris does.
Okay.
Same
I
here.
think Margot Tuft's trying to come off mute to ask a question. Is
Okay.
that correct? Give me a thumbs up
Sure.
if you are. No? Thumbs down if you're not. I can't read lips, unfortunately.
Hello, this is Jim Patsky at the Village at River's Edge. So if we want it or don't want it, how do we communicate that to you? No,
So we,
this per.
yes. So as we go forward, we'll have additional public meetings on the design phase
Mm-hmm.
as we go forward. I will tell you, since at least the sense I got from when I went to we had that meeting, there wasn't really an overwhelming, we want to have this connection to River's Edge. And so, at least from my perspective, it's a whole another future conversation.
Oh, okay, good. I just don't want to see it all of a sudden constructed, a year from now. I just want to make sure we get our input in.
So what about the folks that about phase 3 that don't want it done?
Please introduce yourself.
Sorry, my name is Heather Canabay. I live at 20 Dean. Phase 3 abuts a lot of my property. And I have
Okay.
horses, I have dogs, and I already have issues with people that walk it. I'm right next to River's Edge. My property abuts and goes into River's Edge.
Let me go back. So
In
you were-
addition, I know my Millis neighbors, who obviously don't have a say, are not too happy about this either because it abuts their property line. And I'm not sure about my other neighbors, but they don't like people walking on their land either. And we're all that phase 3.
Okay.
So Rich, do you want to just quickly go through the procedures?
Sure. So since you're talking about phase 3, so phase 3 there's a future phase that we would have to go. Well, we'll need to go through the whole process to have a study done, looking at the feasibility, the connection, the rights, and so forth. So in order to, if it's on private property, all those conversations will need to happen with the private property owners. If is the Medway branch on your property?
Well, it depends on exactly where you put the path, but it's right on my line and or on my property, depending on where you exactly draw it.
Okay.
Or it's on Edison's property, or it's on the Legs property, or it's on my neighbor's Fred Dwelly, who lives in Millis.
Okay.
It literally runs all through there. I only know this because I have horses. I used to ride that line all the time, going up and down. We've had issues with people walking their dogs and huskies attacking my horses. So I'm really not for it. I'm not. And so I just want to know what the procedures are to go, to have a say in that phase. And because none of us received a letter.
So we're really not talking about phase 3 at the moment. We're really talking about phase 1 and 2. So
Okay.
So phase 3 will be a whole nother process in terms of setting letters out to abutters and property owners. And one of the things I will say, if people are walking there today, if they don't have, or they're riding horses on others' property, they're trespassing. So we would have to do this project by obtaining the legal rights to be able to pass and repass over the property. So, and that was one of the things I said at River's Edge, why we would need to have conversations with River's Edge. We just, as a path that's built and constructed and maintained by the town, we have to have the legal rights to be able to invite the public there. If the public is there today, then they're trespassing. They're not there. It's not under our sanction. So, but that'll be talked about in the future.
No, and I understand that. And it's not, like I said, today people walk it, people ride dirt bikes on it, people do all of that. We've had a lot of issues. I grew up in Norfolk. I lived at this growing up, so I've seen it all. But yeah, we understand it's the trespassing. My issue is, you put this out there and you made it public saying that this is the entire project from start to finish. This is what we're looking to do without first getting input from or notifying any of us that this is happening. So now, yes, you need to do due process, but now everybody knows that the Medway branch down through Dean with the promotion that we're going to connect it to the ice skating rink, which would require a sidewalk on that side. And additionally, you're talking about this whole development to have a nice walking path. All phases need to be considered in how people vote, right? Because each path affects the purpose of this and the money being spent. That's just my personal opinion that all of this is a connection on how this benefits the Norfolk town residents.
So Heather, if and Chris, if you don't mind if I just jump in here real quick. So we worked on the master plan for the town of Norfolk, and it sounds like, tonight phase 3 is pretty far out now. Now that, Rich is proposing to change this, which we'll talk about more in a minute. But when we worked on the master plan process, that was about a year and a half process. And we had numerous meetings with different folks in the community. We had Zoom meetings, we had in-person meetings, we were everywhere trying to get as much feedback as possible. There are a few things that stood out that came up repeatedly. One of them was sidewalks. So and when we were talking about sidewalks in, when you think of like a Union Street or something like that, one of our scenic roads, there really isn't space. We would end up having to negotiate with homeowners for, 20, 30 years to try to take over a part of their front yard. And it would be kind of a disastrous project for the homeowners. And so we're trying to think outside the box and say, how do we give people what they want? They want sidewalks. They want to be able to walk safely and exercise. And, so how can we do that if we can't actually put a sidewalk on that road, or it's going to take, decades of negotiations when we could be, doing more things for the town that the town has said that they want. And the sidewalk was it's got to be the number one. I mean, people talked about taxes, which, we don't really have much to do with as far as budgeting. But aside from that, it was sidewalks. People wanted sidewalk, sidewalk, sidewalk. They wanted to make sure their kids could get to school safely. They wanted to walk to the train. I mean, that was the number one thing. So this is one of the number one focus areas that we have for the master plan because of the feedback and the input that we have from the residents of the town. So these meetings are just, we want feedback from people now that we're moving to the next phase saying, okay, we know that you all wanted that. Here's what we're thinking. That's all it is right now, is we're getting feedback, and the feedback that we got at the last meeting was really helpful. The feedback that Rich got at River's Edge was really helpful. That's all it is. We're not saying, this is exactly what it has to be, and that's what we say. We really do want the feedback, but just wanted to give you a little more context that the reason we're working on this at all is because this was such a huge priority for the folks of Norfolk when we worked on the master plan process for a year and a half.
Yeah, I understand that.
Hold on, Heather, before you go. The master plan really is us having that foresight, really thinking about Norfolk into the future, right? And that did include these plans in that as well, right? We weren't just thinking about it from a phased approach, and hopefully we'll get to phase 3 at some point. The master plan was the tool by which we were thinking about the shape and form of what we want to see this town as in the future. We want a robust downtown. You can't have a robust downtown if you're filling half of it with parking lots. You need to provide alternate modes of transportation for folks to get downtown. And that's going to be by foot or by bike or by scooter or other safe methods for individuals to get there. At this point in time, there are really no very safe ways of walking towards town from very many of the neighborhoods that we have. And this is one of the attempts that we're going to make or try to make with, everyone's blessing to try and provide what the town's asked for and what we believe is proper for a bustling downtown, if that's truly what we want, because that's the information that we received.
Can
Heather,
I step in? I had trouble with
no,
Mark.
Heather was next, and then you can go ahead.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
No problem.
No, and I understand that. And I'm not discounting the, what you guys are trying to do here. That's not what I'm looking to do. I guess what is just irritating from my perspective is you got River's Edge input and we won't do this if River just doesn't want to move forward with it. But hey, what about all those other people that live way over there on phase 3 that had no idea this was happening until a Facebook post was posted? And, there's no mention of originally, we need to talk to them about their input as well, right? Like, it's just, for me, it's like, there's more than just River's Edge that lives there. And this is a major thing that goes along it. And I don't, I know it's a phase 3 now, so it's pushed farther out, and I get that, but I do personally think that, as you guys mentioned, this is something as a whole that has to be looked off of. So, if phase 3 is part of this larger project, for me, it comes into it, right? It's like, what is the future plans? And if that's going to affect me, I have concerns with it in the long term.
I hear you and I see you. And Margot, 1 second before you start, I will like to take a moment to call out the town does a fantastic job of publishing our meeting agendas prior to them occurring. Additionally, we've got a newsletter. We try and do our best to publish whatever is going to happen in these meetings via Facebook post if it makes sense for us, if we think there's going to be a good volume of that as well. Additionally, when there is a public hearing and it does affect particular neighbors in an area, we have requirements to send letters in post. The reason why the phase 3 hasn't gone out is because it's just in consideration at this point. There's no public meeting for that at this point in time. There are avenues, and I understand everyone's got a busy life. I work a full-time job. I have 4 children, all in their own sports, and I'm volunteering in order to accomplish this for the town. And so if I can do this, the least that I ask for everyone else to do is sign up for that newsletter. Check the website every once in a while. Check some meeting agendas. If you see something that's interesting and you want more information, email Rich, email myself. We'll give you more information. Participation is power. Go ahead, Margot.
No, don't disagree.
Okay, yeah. In that vein, this grant was done, and I felt like, and I went to the last meeting, as you know, with the planning board, and I felt that this whole plan's been done sort of in a vacuum. It would have been good to be brought into the process before submission of a grant to get feedback as to what people want. It was very clear at the planning board meeting that myself at 27 Medway Branch and many of my neighbors along Medway Branch, along Boardman Street, we don't want a shared use path. We have waited 25 years for a sidewalk from Tucker to Barnstable. We were told 25 years ago we would get one. We were told when they did work on the building at the end of the street by the transfer station that we were getting a sidewalk. And I am concerned that we are going to end up with a double wide shared use path to nowhere, because the big phase of the project, we don't really know with all the costs involved that there's going to be enough money for it. We know the town of Norfolk has no money. They've turned down a school. They're voting down spending money. I don't want to look out my front door and have a double wide sidewalk leading us to nowhere. I want, and many of my neighbors want, a regular sidewalk, monies that have been in the mitigation fund for many, many, many years, want that money released, and I just want a gosh darn sidewalk. I don't want a double wide to nowhere. Now, with what Richard was saying, I think phase 1 is now being combined with phase 4. Is that correct? Originally, what was planned was Tucker to Barnstable. And then from our last meeting, phase 4 was Tucker to Boardman. Now I think you're saying phase 1 is including phase 1 and 4 together. Is that what's
Phase
coming
1
out of
and
this?
phase 2.
Phase 1
Do
and
you want to
2.
bring up that visual again, just to show everyone?
Sure.
It basically goes Boardman to, what was it, Rich? Boardman to Tucker and then Tucker to Barnstable.
Oh, I had it opposite. I had phase 2 as Barnstable to Dean. So the phase 2 that was given out at the last meeting was what?
The same
Was-
phases that we're talking. He's presenting from the same presentation.
So,
Just to clarify, from the meeting you had that we did on December 9th,
mhm.
phase 2 was from the transfer station out to Dean Street.
Right.
And
Okay, that's right. Barnstable to Dean.
So it did change it.
And what is talking about phase 2 now, which was phase 3
4.
before, And the rationale for that is that some of the, whether, I completely understand people might not agree with the rationale, but the comments were made that there was concerns about safety in terms of what's out there today. There's just a dribble berm, a Cape Cod berm that's out there, and that vehicles travel. There's heavy vehicles that go along Medway Branch to transfer station, etc. And a degree of safety higher is a vertical granite curb separating the travelway.
No, I understand the curbing. I'm still trying to understand the phases. Because when we met last time, my understanding Tucker to Boardman was phase 4. Phase 4. This was phase 4, which was Tucker to Boardman. So from what you said earlier, you're now planning on doing from Boardman all the way down to the transfer station and doing a double wide that whole length. Is that correct? Or am I missing something?
The phases were updated. Can you show the visual, Rich, so that everyone can be clear on what was changed?
They changed it.
Yes, the phases were changed. So I don't have it pulled up at the moment. You have it in your hand. So what?
I have what was given out at the last meeting, the phase
Okay.
1 through 4. So
Okay.
I am trying to figure out if I cross
Okay.
off the numbers at the top, what are we talking about phase 1 and 2 now?
Phase 1 and 2 is Barnstable to Tucker. Phase 2 is Tucker to Boardman.
Okay, that was the old phase 4. Okay. Yeah, Tucker to
They
Boardman.
changed the phase.
Okay. So now you're planning the first part of the project, and as I said, is doing the double wide from Boardman to Tucker, Tucker to Barnstable. So doing entire Medway Branch, double wide with curbing.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Then the next phase is what?
No.
The next phase is from the transfer station out to Dean Street.
The original.
That's phase 2. So that's not phase 3. Boy, it would be helpful to have this. Okay. I've made myself clear. And it was brought up by several people at the last meeting. We do not want a double wide sidewalk. We want a regular sidewalk with curbing. And we've waited 25 years.
Okay.
Enough said. I will mute myself now before I scream.
At the risk of you screaming, may I ask why double wide's such a negative? I would assume that having more space for people to walk would be more favorable as opposed to having less.
Well, number one, we're going to have a parking lot with 90 parking spaces you're hoping for at the senior center, of which I'm a little concerned. Not only will I be looking at an empty pavement for 90 cars that aren't there, I will be looking at pavement, and I will be having people now park their cars to walk on the double wide sidewalk. And to be honest with you, I don't have a lot of faith that the next phase is going to get done timely. And we may have a double wide sidewalk leading to nowhere, right? I guess if you want to ride your bike to the transfer station, I'm not overly confident as to the timing on when the next phase would be to utilize that double wide sidewalk. And I don't want to look out on a parking lot with 90 cars. Not that I feel there'll be 90 cars there. I don't want to look out on pavement.
So it's not just one thing, it's a cascading effect that you're feeling.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You guys are going at us. You got 2 projects that are hitting us neighbors, and we're brought in after the fact, and it's not a good place to be. We've been told a lot of things over the years and a lot of agreements, and it hasn't come to fruition. Things aren't happening the way that we were promised. So I don't have faith, and I don't have faith that this double wide. I think it's a waste of money. I don't think it will be utilized. I think it's a total waste. I don't care if there's free money with the state. We need to put that project to good use. This isn't good use.
I mean, unfortunately, the
I
state
don't agree with you.
how we can use the money, unfortunately, right? So, you went on mute by accident. I'm sorry, Margot, you're on mute.
I'd like to ask a question.
1 second, Jay.
Yeah, so the question was, is it because the grant was written in such a way that this is what the money would be used for before getting input from those being affected by this
No,
written?
it's like a scholarship program, right? Like a scholarship could be run for left-handed artists that are interested in photography. And if you are not one of those and you're not pursuing a degree in photography, you're not going to be eligible for that, right? So
Right.
similarly, we had applied for a grant that was specifically for a shared use path, right?
Oh, so it wasn't a shared use path on Medway Branch?
Not necessarily, no, but we dictated this was a good location because of the need from a sidewalk perspective for the town to
Must be
access that location.
California.
I'm sorry, if your iPhone 3, can you go on mute, please?
I don't know what's going on.
Somebody's done.
Somebody's done.
Mr. Landendecker, you had a question?
Yes, sir. I'm a former resident of Lake Street for 22 years. And now for 6 years, I've lived at River's Edge. So I kind of feel like I've been on both sides of the project without being immediately a buddy. However, wonder if there's any opportunity to involve Eversource. When we have a weather event like the wind we had last week or snow or rain, it seems to me Eversource, the first thing they do is dispatch trucks to Norfolk because that whole quadrant of our town has the oldest infrastructure of power service. So they get a lot of calls when bad weather occurs. Wonder if they'd have any interest in spending some of their resources on upgrading the power that's on poles for all the residents that are in that general area, because the trees haven't been maintained for decades, and now they come down when bad weather occurs. I just wish maybe there's a way to spend some of Eversource's money and upgrade the maintenance of the poles, the transformers. It's one of the areas we've always lost power whenever bad weather occurs. Maybe we tie some of their money and interest into upgrading their services because it touches parts of where this project would potentially occur. With whether you're for or against the project, that's still the one area in Norfolk that gets pretty tough along Myrtle and along some of the side streets, particularly Medway Branch, whenever bad weather comes through.
Appreciate the comment. Rich, I don't know about the feasibility of any of that. I don't know if that's something that we can proactively do to alert them of the construction phase of this, or what the feasibility of something like that would be. But comment noted.
Agree.
Looking to the audience for any further comments. And if you just coughed, please put yourself on mute.
Hello, this is Ron Burke, 31 Tucker Road. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Ron.
Along the lines of what Margot talked about, at the last meeting, public meeting that you held, the overwhelming feedback from the my neighbors and myself and Margot was that we want a sidewalk. We really don't want a combined use path. And so here we are a couple of weeks later, and now the scope has expanded from $500,000 to $1.1 million for a combined use path. So you're seeking feedback, but I'm not sure you're hearing the feedback. We don't, it's nice to get free money from the state, but if the people that live in the neighborhood don't want what's being offered, why continue to pursue it? And part of the reason why, I think it's inappropriate in that area is although the town has an adequate right of way to accommodate a 10-foot wide bike path, it's in the terrain is such that you'd have to put in retaining walls or make large scale changes to the terrain to accommodate the bike path. So that makes it even worse for the people that live there because in order to accommodate this project that we don't really want in the first place, you're going to make substantial changes to the look and feel of the neighborhood. So I kind of think it's a waste of a lot of money when clearly the only thing that we're looking for is a relatively safe 3-4 foot wide paved sidewalk between Tucker Road and Barnstable Road. We don't need the rest. Thank you.
Good comment, Mr. Burke. All right, before we continue to take any additional comments, I do want to state if the comments that you're going to make are going to be similar or have already been communicated, I'd like for you to reserve those for the time being. With that being said, Ms. Valley.
Hi, Beth Valley. I live on Red Maple Run over here at River's Edge. I was not able to attend the meeting with Rich at our clubhouse, but I did. My husband went and I was brought up to speed a little bit. My comment is similar, but it feels like this is all backwards. You know, the master plan, people want sidewalks. No one said we really want a sidewalk on Breadway Branch. They wanted sidewalks on other streets. The town doesn't have the money to do that. You found a grant that would give you a shared use path. And it's kind of like, okay, now where can we put it? It feels very, very backwards to me. It just seems very backwards. Instead of trying to meet a need, it feels like you're checking a box. Oh, we have a shared use path. This is really good for the town. I really am missing a whole part of the process here on how this came about.
The shared use path was actually specifically what we were going for. That's it just happened to be that there's a grant right now, which, you know, Rich looks out for regularly for the town for planning needs. But the shared use path is actually exactly what was discussed in the master plan. People wanted to be able, they want their kids to be able to bike safely, they want to bike safely, and they want to be able to walk as well. And, you know, we see people on their bicycles all over town that are on the road, and that's fine. That's, you know, they can do that, and we go 4 feet around them. But it's a safer way. A lot of times it's the parents saying they don't feel comfortable, you know, they don't allow their kids to ride their bikes to school. They don't allow their kids to ride their bikes to sporting events, you know, anything like that because of this. So it was really the multi-use path. If you look in the master plan, that actually is in there. We discussed it in many, many meetings, and that became the solution to, you know, because on some roads, again, we can't fit sidewalks. Not that Medway Branch is, you know, that one. We know that we can. But this came up and it was, okay, how do we get from one side of the town to the other? How does, you know, how best can we do that? Because the multimodal path is the way that it's said in the master plan was actually the result that we wanted to get more of so that people could bike safely, walk safely, you know, whatever on their little power bikes or whatever they may be on these days. So it's not like Rich found this grant and then said, how can we fit it in? This is actually our strategy based on the feedback. And it's not that multimodal paths will be all over the town. It's where you know, for the most part, we're trying to maneuver and get around, you know, different areas where we can't put a sidewalk. So maybe Medway Branch isn't that one. I know Rich was he was saying, well, we really owe them a sidewalk. Let's see if we can make this work.
Why did you choose Medway Branch then? I mean, are there people who really want to walk to the senior center or?
Yeah,
I would say the proponents were from the senior center, actually.
So
yes.
many. And I'm actually very surprised to hear that River's Edge didn't want the connection because most of my feedback that I have written down is from the senior center or River's Edge saying they really want to be able to walk and they can't do that right now and they don't feel safe walking on the main road. So I thought this was going to be a huge win over there. I'm actually kind of shocked to hear the feedback from Rich.
Well, the issue was really where it was ending, where it was coming out at River's Edge was certainly a big problem. And the fact that if it was going to be a public pathway, you're really introducing a lot of foot, bicycle, wheeled traffic through our community where we've already had some problems with that. We've had safety problems.
Yeah, so in terms of River's Edge and some of the comments that were discussed at that meeting, we haven't, to Heather's point, we haven't even put together a feasibility study and how that would all work. So there's a lot of questions that would need to be answered as part of that process. So just back up a little bit. When we did the Metacom and Greenway over on the other side of town, we put together, it first started with a feasibility study. And then from the feasibility study, a lot of the questions that were raised, that you raised just now, were addressed. And then it moved, moved on to the design, engineering, and permitting. So a lot of those questions will be addressed through that process, which also includes the public process. Medway Branch it's a public right of way. It meets it, and so there's a way to start somewhere, and that was the thought behind it, because it provides a connection and it could build towards a larger connection down the road. I would love to say that there's money out there for sidewalk projects, but sidewalk projects are by no means competitive in terms of the grant sources that are out there. So this was a way to try to come up with a creative solution to address some of those walking needs, because of the discussion with Rockwood Road 115 to be able to put sidewalks in. It was a multi-million-dollar project that you'd have to design, you have to fund the design, then put it on the tip that it wasn't feasible. So this was an alternative to look at to be able to try to accomplish a similar goal. So that's where it came to this.
And so that's where we're at. We are in a position of, we're trying to do what we think is best. We're trying to provide you with something that is a similar analog to what it is that's been requested. And unfortunately, we can't provide you exactly what it is that you want, right? And so we're stuck between that rock and a hard place of providing this mixed use path, which would, service the town in a net benefit way. But we're hearing that's not what's wanted. If we don't do anything at this point, then nothing will happen. That's the risk that we have in front of us. Absolutely nothing. There will be no sidewalk expansion on this path for years to come. Just keep that in mind. Mr. Shute from Beta, please.
Thank you. Matt Shute with Beta. We've been assisting the town over the last year or two with a couple of projects, and I just wanted to add a little bit more depth to the background of how the projects come about. In addition to the master plan, the town put together a prioritization plan back in 2018. I wasn't involved at the time, but I'm aware of what happened. There was a public process there, public meetings to get the town's input on where the town wanted to see projects, what types of improvements. And the Medway Branch improvements are on that list. It's been on there since that time, among other projects. And the projects that are more attractive are those that, like Rich already said, that don't involve acquisition of right-of-way. And the Medway Branch corridor has significant right-of-way where the improvements can be done without acquiring land from folks, at least for the first two phases. So that's kind of additional background as to how that plan took place. I believe that plan is available on the town's website. The list of projects is there. There's a description, and the Medway Branch is described as one giant project, but as we've stated, it's been broken up into phases to fund it appropriately. And as Chris mentioned, the funding that you have in the mitigation fund isn't enough to do even a sidewalk, possibly not even for half of that length. So that's all I wanted to add.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Shute. So I'm not seeing any more hands. Actually, iPhone 3, please identify yourself and your street. You're talking, you're still on mute. See, the hand went down, so I'm going to assume there's no further comments. Miss Valley, last comment before we close out.
Thank you. The money that Rich talked about on the grant is to cover basically planning aspects of this, none of the actual construction, right? Was I
Both.
confused there? And what
This
town
is
money is involved?
Rich, you want to rehash this one last time, please?
Sure. The grant would fund design, engineering, and construction. The money from the town is the 70,000 to be able to for phase 1 and 2, which would come from the mitigation fund.
So 70,000 against a $1.1 million project. That's our investment.
Yes.
Pretty good return on investment, if you ask me. All right. I'm going to be
Can I
closing.
ask one, Margot, can I ask one more question? Are there any
Last one,
restrictions?
Margot.
Okay. Are there any restrictions? I know that money was collected from developers over the years that was supposed to be used for sidewalks. And has anybody looked in to see if there is any restrictions on the use of those funds for a shared use path versus a sidewalk? Just asking.
I don't believe so.
Might be worth
wasn't
looking
any-
into. Might be worth
Well,
looking into. That's all I'm saying.
So we did go back and look at the origin of. There was no restriction in terms of there was no it came through mitigation from subdivision projects. It wasn't as if it was set up with a purpose with the money.
All right, so closing out public discussion, Rich, I just want to make sure that we are good on reviewing the shared use path design options that you intended to show here tonight. Good?
You're asking the board, right?
I'm asking you, Rich. You've shared everything you wanted to share.
Oh yeah, I've shared everything.
All right, so opening it up for discussion with the board. Dan, Melissa, Gary, any additional comments? Anything that you want to address that you've heard?
Maybe two things. One, Rich, at the sake of belaboring things, what is the order of operations here as far as the different grants that you talked about? So there's like Mass Trail for designs, there's a MassDOT one. Like, how do these sequence out? Like, once we commit this mitigation funding, what is the process?
So in terms of the commitment, the one that's in right now is phase 1, which is just construction from Tucker Road to Barnstable.
I'm not even care to talk about the different phases. It's like, if we get the Mass Trails for design, does that then front load a grant that would have already been gotten for that?
No, it's going to be
So
expanded.
how does the design grant work then?
The design grant would expand the scope of the design so that we're doing that phase 1 and 2. Because by combining them together.
It allows us to increase the scope of the original design intent.
Correct. Yes.
Got it.
Okay.
And it also includes the ability to have construction observations, which with just a submittal for phase 1, that was going to have to be done through DPW. There was no money to hire outside inspectors to observe the work.
So that would allow us to have beta on site throughout the construction to ensure that everything was done to code, everything was done in a way that made sense.
Yes. So that's an added on benefit to doing it this way.
Thanks. Yeah, it wasn't clear to me exactly where the Mass Trails grant came in, so that's helpful. Thank you.
Melissa, Gary, any comments?
Gary, if you have some, you feel free. I've
He's
already.
shaking his head. That's good.
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just wondering if the folks that live nearby, and they were very clear to Margot's point, they were very clear that they would rather have a single sidewalk. I know that that's not what this is. The grant is for, but I'm wondering if we try to start at a different phase where folks would actually want this. Because it was, when we mentioned this to folks, they were, I mean, in the meetings, they were like, that's a genius idea. Everybody I've talked to when I've mentioned it after the fact, they're like, oh, that's so smart. And now hearing, from people that would actually be impacted by it, that they don't want it. I'm just thinking, do we just look at the phases that we have and maybe try to bring it to another area where people would want it?
Yeah, similarly, I drive to the transfer station Wednesdays and Saturdays, and on a nice summer or even a fall or a spring day, I want to know where all the walkers are, where all the bikers are, the ones who look at me with a side eye because they think I might be too close to them as I'm passing them on my way towards the transfer station. I haven't heard a net positive review of this effort, and I would have thought from that street that we would have absolutely received one. I see dozens of people within my short little trips to the transfer stations each time walking up and down that road. And, maybe there is a problem with our communication. Maybe we're not reaching enough people, but I really thought we were going to get much more positive communication outside of this back from the town. But I am also
Okay.
similarly concerned that we're not going to get anything.
Right, same. I mean, that's my concern as well because I mean, the senior center, River's Edge in particular, that's where like people kept saying we really need to walk. We want to be able to walk, and I really thought this was going to be a huge win in that area, and I was really excited to be able to provide it to people, and actually make progress on the master plan. But I am concerned also that this 25-year sidewalk doesn't get done, if there's not enough money for that. So I guess that's my question really is to the folks who they live right there. And I'm not trying to, be an alarmist. I'm just wondering, would you rather have a, double-sized path or potentially nothing for longer? And I don't know.
Well, it's not potentially, it's absolutely for
Right.
longer.
Well, for now, of course, but like if there is a sidewalk grant, of course, Rich would apply for that. We just don't know when those are going to come up.
Can I say something? What about doing the phase to the skating rink from the DPW garage to the skating rink first and see if that goes through, what the obstacles are going through that area? Forget about River's Edge, forget about Medway Branch. Let's just see if we can get that part done before we do a connector to it. Right?
Yeah,
the shared use path is the connector to the end result, which is the pathway to the ice skating rink or Dean Street. Why don't we get that path done first? So some of our concerns aren't that we're ending up with a double wide to nowhere. Why don't we focus on that end and go through that process?
Hey, Margot, on the opposite end, because I am that phase 3 to the skating rink, I would have the same concern. We have a path to nowhere. And also, you then need a sidewalk for where it comes out on Dean to the ice skating rink. It's far.
And if
and
it's
it's
a way to get a sidewalk,
I agree.
Then what are we?
I don't agree
what are we
with
even
any
doing?
of it.
I mean, and also you brought up your concerns of this isn't just about a double wide path to get the sidewalk. There's going to be a huge parking lot with 90 parking spaces and all this other stuff. Like, why not plan to raise the money or whatever we need to finish the sidewalk that needs to be done? Yeah, it might be a couple of years, but how many years to this sidewalk is even finished, this double wide shared path, plus a huge parking lot to nowhere?
Yeah, we talked about
no matter which way you do it.
We talked about the timing at the last meeting. It wouldn't be that long for the sidewalk for the double.
We were told 25 years ago we would have a sidewalk the next year. So sorry, I'm not overly confident in the timelines.
So I guess these are all valid. So in terms of the timeline, we've identified a source in terms of how to do the design and the construction. So if it were to be approved, there is a timeline, there's a budget to do it. What was, and I understand, I mean, the sidewalk was promised 25 years ago, and it hasn't happened. I don't know. I'll have to talk to DPW. How many new sidewalks has the town of Norfolk built themselves over the past 25, 30 years?
Yeah. None.
Outside of a developer building a sidewalk. So, hence I think that was the coming through the concern from people when we did the master plan process. The town, there's a budget, it goes to different things, there are hard priorities, and at the end of the day, to build a sidewalk doesn't rise to the priority level that maybe other things get a higher priority. So it hasn't happened. And we're trying to have a pathway to tactically make some of these things happen. If people don't want them, then that's fine. It's a choice. So then maybe the choice is it doesn't happen. And there is no sidewalk there, and there is no shared use path. And that's important in part of the process, because then if that doesn't happen, when people ask about what about that, then we can report back and say, look, we went through the process. The people who live there, they don't want to see it happen. Therefore, we're not going to move forward. That's a choice to be had. And that's okay, too. If people don't want it, it's fine as a choice.
Rich, I just want to clarify two things. One, I know Margot mentioned the parking lot and Heather just jumped on that. I just want to be really clear. We're not proposing a parking lot to go along with this. What Margot is referencing is the senior center parking lot expansion, which is out of the scope of this, just so folks who are on don't think that we're proposing a 90 space parking lot here. I think the second thing is, and this is something that we heard in some of the public meetings that we did, and I think has been lost here, is, I don't think that this is necessarily a path to nowhere. I mean, one of the things that we had heard and talked about in the previous meetings was the connectivity between Cape Cod Estates going down Medway Branch and into Boardman and the sidewalks that branch out from there. So I agree with, what Melissa and what Chris are saying. If everybody just doesn't want it, we're not really hearing much in the way of favorable feedback or support for it. But I just don't want to lose sight of the fact that this wasn't, when we had talked about it before, wasn't just about a path to nowhere down Medway Branch. There was people weighing in on the connectivity to the different neighborhoods and how you actually have, several miles of walkable sidewalks and paths that would tie together with this connection.
100%. Where it's about thinking about how do we connect one of the largest neighborhoods in Norfolk and get the senior center in there as well as a bonus, right?
So can I ask a question? How does that, what you just talked about, have anything to do with phase 3, which really does go to the middle of nowhere on the Millis line, right? That's only an ice skating rink that if anyone's going to walk to that, it's going to be in the winter that gets dark at 4 p.m. and you're walking through the woods. And half of that is high tension lines that is sand and gravel and not really bikeable. And it's just, it doesn't connect to a neighborhood. So I'm just concerned of where this phase 3, like, how does this buy into like, that's my concern. I understand what you're trying to do, but all the phases depend on each other. So I can't feel comfortable voting on anything until I really understand how this is all going to happen. Because to Margot's point, you don't want a path that just stops because now all the other phases, it doesn't make sense. So I understand your first point about the board, like, connectivity, right? But I'm not understanding how all these this phase to me doesn't really seem to tie in.
Well, that was my whole point, that if you didn't do phase 3, you still have this other connectivity.
Right.
That it's
we don't
not
necessarily need a phase 3. Phase 3 is a bonus.
You're right. That you're, and that's what, like, I mean, that's what I understood through this whole process was the benefit and intention behind this, that even if you never move forward with any of the future phases, you're still connecting Cape Cod Estates into Boardman, the Boardman neighborhoods up to the senior center, et cetera. If we never move forward with phase 3, there is still benefit in this on its own, is what my understanding to this whole process was.
And phase 3 is an identified need because people are in there every day.
Right. And it only costs us $70,000 to do this right at this point. You know, like it seems to me like it's a net benefit. You're not going to get, you know, as much mileage from a sidewalk perspective out of 70 grand as you would like, right?
But if the other phases don't happen, you end up with a double wide sidewalk really to nowhere, where a single sidewalk from Tucker to Barnstable is all that's needed. Let's talk about
We can't afford that.
If
So
we
is
were able to
nothing
build
better
that,
than something?
yeah, we would do that. That is not an option,
Okay.
unfortunately. And I think the other
Okay.
thing that this has really shown us is that going forward, like as a lesson learned, when we look for developer mitigation and we establish things like a sidewalk fund, we need to make sure that we're actually getting money to do that so we can actually deliver that type of stuff that you guys have been promised for 25 years. But the reality is where we stand today, there is no opportunity for that sidewalk.
Right.
Okay. Then I propose going forward with nothing. That's my vote.
I appreciate it. We're going to close out public comment. We are going to move to a vote. I'll remind you that the vote is only for the planning board. The vote is so I'm looking for a motion to vote on use of the offsite mitigation funds to offset Medway Branch shared use path design, engineering, and permitting.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, we're going to do a roll call vote. Melissa Mayo,
No.
Mr. Sullivan,
Aye.
Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. All right, so the motion carries. Rich, any other unanticipated new business that may come before the board?
So just to clarify, is that 1 and 2 that vote was for?
Do you want me to redo it with the clarification?
Yeah, just
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to approve both phase 1 and phase 2 to utilize the offsite mitigation funds to offset the Medway Branch shared use path design, engineering, and permitting.
So
And this
moved.
is cool, Chris, just to clarify to you, this is contingent upon grant award, right?
yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So if we don't get the grant, then this money stays in the sidewalk fund.
Correct, yes.
Got it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, well, we will redo the roll call vote in the same order. Ms. Mayo,
No, actually, you know what? I've never voted no before. Do I have to say, is no okay? Do I have to say nay or something else?
no or nay is acceptable, yes.
Okay, well, no.
Mr. Sullivan,
Aye.
Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. All right. Rich, you good?
Yeah, thank you.
All right,
Everyone.
appreciate it. Any other unanticipated news or new business that you want to bring up in front of the board?
No.
All right, then I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
First, I want to thank everybody for showing up and giving input. That's important.
It is important. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Ms. Mayo,
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan,
Aye.
Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.